Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to another Burlingame. It's a small-town podcast sponsored by the Burlingame Historical Society. My name is Mark Lucchese, also known as Mark at the Mic, and it's my pleasure to have as my guest today Sarah Simson, Burlingame's first Executive Director of the Burlingame Library Foundation. Sarah has been the Executive Director since 2021. Sarah, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be able to talk about this 28-year-old foundation that's been raising money for the Burlingame Library.
So it's 28 years old?
It is.
Wow,
yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, 1995.
Wow, good homework, Sarah. Well done.
Well, we talk about it a lot.
I bet. Okay, so there's a lot of folks that don't know the difference between a foundation and a trustee, a board of trustees. I'm on the board of trustees here at the library. You're the foundation executive. Can you explain a little bit of the differences?
I can. Well, how about this? Why don't I say what the foundation does and then you say what the trustees do?
Great. We're the guardians of the money, okay?
So basically, the foundation is here to, we go to the library staff every year through the city librarian, Brad McCulley. We ask them what they want to do that is over and above what the city's budget allows. And whatever they have the capacity to do, whether it's programs or materials, sometimes capital projects, we raise that money. And so that support request comes back to the foundation, and the board looks at it and says, sure, we can do that, or sure, you want more, whatever. It's a very enthusiastic group, and that's how it works.
How many are in the group?
There are 18 board members, so on the board of directors, and then Brad and I. And then we have about 15 bookselling volunteers who come in regularly to work on that, and I can tell you more about bookselling later. And then during our book sales and during our events, we have our fundraising events, we have other volunteers who come back who actually are a lot of Library Foundation board member alumni who just can't stay away.
Right, and that's always kind of fun, right?
Yeah, it's
People
great.
Want to keep their hands, they want to stay a little bit involved.
Absolutely.
Sure. So can you tell me what maybe the primary mission and vision of the Library Foundation is?
Sure. We are here to preserve and enrich the Burlingame Public Library. So we don't decide on where the money is spent. We just fundraise from our generous donors in the community to provide that money to the city library staff.
Right. And when you walk in our beautiful library, you walk right into the alley?
Yes. Albert.
Thank you.
Q. Feathers.
Yes.
Yes.
And that was a great time there, wasn't it? You had a big contest going on to name the owl?
We did. So the contest corresponded with this summer's summer learning program that the children's librarians put on every summer.
Right.
In fact, not just for children. Adults can also participate in the summer learning program by reading books and keeping track. And so during that time, we had this naming contest, and we had about 1,100 entries from 900 individual entrants. And so it was really popular. And then there was a group of volunteers from the board who got together and narrowed the names down. And we were just planning on picking one, but there were 3 that we really loved. And it turned out when we had them on a list on the whiteboard, it made a perfect formal name for a bronze owl sculpture.
Yeah.
And so his official name is Albert Q. Feathers.
I love it. Great. Great stuff.
Yeah. And actually the preservation of that sculpture, it's a Benny Bufano sculpture, and Bufano has probably a dozen or 2 sculptures around the Bay Area. And then I keep discovering them actually all over the country. But once you start looking, you can't stop. You're like, oh, there's one at Temple University in Pennsylvania.
Really?
It's just random. But that sculpture was donated to the library, but it was in terrible shape. It had been outside for 30 years.
Was it at Hillsdale?
So it had originally, maybe it was made at Hillsdale because
shopping center or something.
Yeah,
right.
He had a studio there, but then it was down in Belmont, in Twin Pines Park, and then at an organization that eventually became the Peninsula Museum of Art. and they are who donated it to us. So after about 30, 40 years of having it, they are closing down. And so they were looking for a place for it, and it was here. So then I found a woman who does art conservation up in San Francisco. And thanks to the generous donors to the foundation, we were able to fund the conservation. And so now nothing, the owl is as it is. It will remain beautiful and shiny, and it has a pedestal, and it will be here forever. And those kids who named it, they'll come in here when they're 50, 60, 70 years old and say, oh, I named that owl. Yeah. So it's pretty cool.
Before I get too far, how did you end up being the first executive director of the foundation?
Well, if you want to go all the way back to how I started in nonprofit fundraising, that was my first job out of college, was with the American Cancer Society doing fundraising events. And then in between that young age and now, I was a fifth grade teacher. And
around here?
In San Francisco.
Great. Mm-hmm.
And then I had a couple of kids, so I stopped teaching. And when I was ready to go back to work, I was already a volunteer on the board. I was a board member, and then I was doing some contract work on special projects. And I was really honored as the foundation looked ahead after the pandemic and kind of looked at all the ways that we are raising money and needing some continuity year to year as board members come and go and as executive officers come and go. It just made sense to have a part-time executive director. And so I was really honored that they asked me. I guess my attention to detail and organizational skills and computer skills and marketing skills, it all just kind of came together to fit this role, and it's been great.
So you said part-time. Are you salaried part-time? Is that how that works?
I work hourly.
You work
so
hourly.
I just track the hours that I work and what I've been working on.
And how many hours a week, give or take?
It averages to be about 15 to 20. If in the summer when we're really quiet and I go to see my family, I work maybe 3 hours a week. And then sometimes I'm up to 20.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. How often does the foundation meet as a group?
We meet once a month for our board meeting, and then committee work is done in between. So if there's a fundraising event going on, that group will meet separately. Or if, the book selling committee, they are there. Someone's there every day processing book donations and selling books.
Jim Cannon?
Yes.
Yes. And I think Mike Nagler kind of has something to do with the bookstore over there, too.
Exactly. He curates, I like to say, our finest books to the in-library bookstore. So if your listeners are looking for a gift for somebody or just like to browse around and add to their collection, please come shop.
Yeah. Do you go to committee meetings?
I do. I am very heavily involved in the communications committee because all of the communications that go out each week to our constituents I am doing. But then we have a few volunteers who are, they're just creative and involved and kind of polishing things up. And then we have a fundraising committee, and same thing. I kind of do the work in the background for those committees. And then I just admire from afar the book selling committee. That's I love that group. I love going to visit them, but I don't do any of that work.
Yeah. So does the foundation have some sort of long-term goals?
We base, again, like I said before, we really base our goals on the needs of the library and the library staff. We do have in mind that we will eventually need to fundraise for additional capital improvements. So we raised about $1 million back in 2015 for the renovations inside the library. The lane room downstairs is going to get a makeover. We have already $100,000 that a donor gave a few years ago prior to the pandemic to make that happen. And so that's finally going to roll out. But it's, just because of inflation, it's going to cost much more than that.
Yes,
so
right.
What's nice about this group of volunteers and the donors, the longtime donors and the new donors, is that they're game to do whatever the library needs, and that's what drives our operation.
That's terrific,
yeah.
boy. Okay, so here's a question I have. I pay taxes.
Yeah.
Why should I also donate money to the schools and libraries?
Okay, so I have answers. For sure, the schools. I can actually suggest. I can hook you up with somebody to talk. Maybe have another Burlingame It's a Small Town interview about that, because that is a really complicated issue. I have kids in public school, and this woman that I know that I'll introduce you to, she can really summarize it pretty well. As far as the donations to the library, the donors, when they make a donation, it is going to fund things that in a tight city budget just would not happen. So what we're able to do is allow for, specifically what we pay for is 100% of the programming that happens at the library. And I don't know what percentage of books and media, but, sort of, I don't want to say sky's the limit, but our donors are so generous, and anything that the library deems necessary to bring this outstanding library experience to everyone in the community, the donors to the foundation are making happen. And that's really why, because it's a tight city government budget and there are cuts to it. And the foundation allows the library staff to never think, oh, we're going to have to go without this or that program for kids or seniors or whatever.
Yeah.
So.
Is the foundation meetings your meetings once a month? Is that open to the public? Can anybody drop in, or do they have to call ahead and ask permission or anything like that?
Because we are a working board and we're doing the work of the foundation, like since I'm the only staff person and I'm part-time, and we're essentially just planning our fundraising, it's not an open meeting. We're not providing any kind of service other than to the library staff, if that makes sense. So it's not an open meeting. It's really like it's a working session. That's
right.
When we get work done and make decisions about what we're working on.
What about donors? Can they come to the meeting? How does that whole process work with a donor? I am going to donate to the library. So walk me through that a little bit.
Oh, how to make a donation?
Yeah, well, and say I'm a steady donator over the years. Can I come to a meeting?
No. You could if you wanted to. I'd probably ask you if you actually want to join the board and start doing some work for the foundation. So it's at your own risk. If you come to a meeting.
I like how you say that. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I will always find a place for a volunteer to be more involved, for sure. But in terms of making a donation, there are a few ways to do that. Right now, we're actually encouraging our donors to think about, if they have the capacity, to think about non-cash donations. So making a donation of stock, or if they are of that age, making a donation from their IRA, or thinking about us as they do their estate plan. So adding the Burlingame Library and Burlingame Library Foundation to a will is another way that, if they really want to make an impact in the legacy of the library, they can do it that way. All of this information that I'm saying, and as well as a button to donate, is on our website, which is burlingamelibraryfoundation.org.
One more time.
burlingamelibraryfoundation.org.
Great.
And if you just Google Burlingame Library Foundation, we're the only thing that pops up.
And that's where they can also find the Burlingame Library sweatshirts and merchandise like that.
And yes, as well as information about upcoming fundraising events that we have happening.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about that. Why don't you provide us with a little overview of the current projects that are going on or going to go on?
Absolutely. So we have upcoming a 4-day book sale from October 12th through the 15th. And that is, I want to say probably 15,000 books will be put out, which is incredible if you think about it. These are all books donated by generous people in the community. What's great about the book sales is that it's a way for people in our community, number one, to recycle books, but number two, for people who wouldn't otherwise have access to, literally bags of beautiful children's books or beautiful, fiction, nonfiction, how-to, self-help. Everything is there, and they're all priced at $1, $2, 50 cents if it's a paperback. So it's getting books out to the community that otherwise were just sitting on a shelf, and that's all done by volunteers.
Yeah.
So that's information about the times can be found in the library on all of our posters, as well as on our website. So in addition to that, on October 22nd, which is a Sunday evening at 5:30, we have a speaker series program where we have teamed up with an organization called Jazz at the Ballroom, and they are helping us to bring professional musician who sings and plays Frank Sinatra music, and then an author who's written a couple of Frank Sinatra books and really has the inside scoop about Frank's rise in fame, his power in politics. I mean, all the things that maybe have come across your radar, but probably not. So it's going to be this combination of like all the best songs with the intermixed with kind of this gossip about Frank. So
right. Mm-hmm.
I encourage everyone, it is a fundraising event, so we're selling tickets, but I encourage anyone, young and old, it's all music that we've loved, we've heard in movies, we've heard in ads, it's everywhere. And then this is just going to be like an extra layer of information about it. And it's for a great cause. So.
And tickets are on sale now?
Tickets are on sale now. On our website, there's a link, and
Great.
It's a really easy interface.
Great. Mm-hmm. So the speaker series is back up and running, correct? It was kind of went away for a year or so?
It did because of COVID.
Correct.
Yep.
Right.
So
is this the first year back, or was there a series last year?
There was a series last year. We had a couple of events. We had another music event, and then that was a year ago in October, and then we had this really interesting event where people came, professional performers, and read from their diaries from when they were adolescents and teenagers.
Really?
Tweens and teens, yes. And they're all, as I said, they're professionals, so they do it in a way that's really compelling. And oh my gosh, it's just even if you didn't keep a journal, the stuff they wrote you can relate to, because it's like, okay, I would have probably written the same thing at some point. So I was crying, laughing. It was so good. Yeah.
The people that are putting together the Frank Sinatra evening, are they the same ones that did the things last year, or do you have a different group arranging these things?
It's the same. So these are all board members that do this. So Christina Funk and Randy Murray really drive the speaker series. They do it all as volunteers. They're both board members. And they come up with the ideas. They approach the speakers. They approach the group that did the diary reading performance. We had Mike McFall and Jackie Spear come and talk about Ukraine.
That was wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, incredible. And that was just made through a connection. Obviously, Jackie Spear lives around here. Michael McFall is down at Stanford. And so it was such a topical, timely event, and really of interest to everyone.
It was well attended too.
Very
I thought.
well attended. Yeah. I mean, those people they're stars, and we have them right here.
Beyond this event in October, is there going to be anything else coming up this year, or are we going into next year?
We are going to be fundraising, starting just traditional, directly marketing to our community members for
So this would be
donations.
This would be the end of the speaker series for this year?
It is,
okay.
Yes. And then we're working on what to do next year. That, again, because it's a volunteer-driven organization, I always say to them, we're not going to do anything unless you all enjoy it. So let's figure out what we feel passionate about carrying out in terms of what would be successful for not just for the people who attend, but the people who plan it. I mean, I'm sure anyone who's listening who's worked on a volunteer project knows that if there isn't that will from the volunteers to get something really fabulous, it can be kind of a drag.
Yeah,
so as an organization, we've all kind of made a pact that if it's fun, we're going to keep doing it, and if it's a burden, why bother? Let's figure out that the funds are there from our incredibly generous community. That's never been an issue, even through COVID, when we weren't doing anything other than asking for money. And so in terms of, the longevity of this organization, the people who are volunteering for it, that's why it exists. So the fundraising has to be done in a way that works for them.
Yeah. If somebody makes out a check to the Burlingame Library, does it go to the library or does it go to the foundation? Is there a little, do you follow what I'm saying there? Yeah.
I think that does happen from time to time by mistake. And I think it goes to the city, and then the city sends it back to us. Disperses it. I mean, right now, like for instance, if we want to get really into the nitty gritty, we have this bookstore, right? And people can pay with a credit card at the circulation desk. And once a month, the lovely accountant with the library, Olma, she cuts a check to the foundation. Everyone's keeping track for us.
Right, right.
So,
has the foundation ever been faced with book banning issues?
No. Other than our complete distaste for the process of book banning across the entire board, no, no one's ever made any kind of request to us.
That becomes a trustee issue as well. And I've been on that board for about a year and a half, and we haven't had any issues like that at all, except why, right?
Right.
Yeah. So.
Yep.
Okay, how about this one? How do you or the foundation feel about the ribbon right out here in the reading room covering the historical tapestry motto saying, "Living in Burlingame is a special privilege"?
I don't know when the original writing was put onto. I don't know when that tapestry was made, but I think currently, and this is just my opinion, currently that word privilege is kind of loaded in society. And I think I would imagine the original intent of that phrase was just to say living in Burlingame is special. And now it's just taken on a different meaning, and maybe it can just say living in Burlingame is special, because it is.
Does that ever come up in a foundation meeting?
I don't actually recall whether I talked about it. I know I talked about it with Brad, but I don't know if we talked about it widely at a board meeting. I honestly can't remember.
Okay, good. So what has surprised you the most since getting involved as the executive director of the foundation?
Oh, the depth of the service that the library provides to the community, honestly. I read the budget that, Brad McCulley gives to the city, and even just listening to I listened to his mark on the mic, Burlingame is a small town.
Right, yes, that was one of my first ones.
Just 24 hours a day, the library is providing something to someone, and that's incredible. We're so fortunate to have an organization, a city, mostly city funded. The foundation is very important, but the city's really made having a well-funded library a priority, and it shows just because of everything that is done.
How's your family?
It's funny you ask. My grandmother, my dad's mother, was a really long-time library volunteer from forever. She had been an elementary school teacher before getting married, and then had to stop working because at that time you couldn't be a teacher and be married. So then she volunteered at the library, and that she was quite old when she stopped volunteering because she couldn't hear the little ones because their voices were too high. And that was a real bummer to her. But she had all of her library people who would just drop books off to her even when she couldn't leave the house. And then my mom in South Burlington, Vermont, she is on the board of her library foundation. And they just built a new library. So she fundraised for the last 5 years or so with a group. They got some professional help, but there's not the money in South Burlington, Vermont like there is here. And they raised, over $1 million. And then the city, they got funds from here and there. But they have a beautiful new library. So The library is in my blood.
It's in your blood. Do you have children here in the Burlingame school system?
I do. I have a 7th grader, my son Hollis, and then I have a sophomore in high school, my son Oscar. And then my husband, Julian Bill, he works for YouTube, and he's great. He's from England, actually, so
wonderful.
That's also an interesting part of our family, an
and
important part.
You guys have been residents in Burlingame for how long now?
Since 2014.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, one last question here before we wrap it up.
Mm-hmm.
How would you describe this library to somebody who's never seen it?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I guess I'd be really superficial and say it's one of the most beautiful libraries that you'll ever step foot into. It is the style of it and the color palette and the fixtures and everything are very, very stunning. And then the staff, is just as beautiful. I have had so much fun getting to know everyone here because of the staff. The city librarian is amazing. Yeah, and I guess I would probably go with the superficial.
You bet, because there's 3 floors here, 3 wonderful floors packed with books. We got everything you want, DVDs, CDs. Yeah. One of the great things I like now are the books with the large type, with the large print.
Right, there's almost a whole room of them at this point.
I think Cynthia does a great job of ordering those books, and so it's just wonderful because I wear these glasses, the 300s now or something, and but with the big print, it really helps a lot.
Yeah, relax your eyes.
Yes, absolutely.
So things like there's a real attention to detail. I think would be an important part of describing the Burlingame Library.
Okay. One last plug, October 22nd, that's a Sunday. Mm-hmm. What time?
It's at 5:30 until 7. It's the perfect primer, and then you just go out and have a wonderful dinner on Burlingame Avenue and talk about the program and know that you have made a difference to the users of the Burlingame Library.
Are refreshments served at this?
We serve
event?
A little sparkling water, white wine, and sparkling wine. No red wine is allowed on these rugs.
Right. Okay. Yes, no kidding, huh? Sarah Simson, thank you so much for being a guest today.
Thank you. I really enjoyed myself.
I'd like to thank Sarah Simson, the Executive Director of the Burlingame Library Foundation, for being my guest today on Burlingame. It's a small town podcast sponsored by the Burlingame Historical Society. Thanks to my new addition, my thought partner, Mike Nagler, for his guest suggestions and his help with my guest questions. Thanks to Kathy and Shelby Lucchese for editing and producing, the great Ray Tyler for video, original music by Bray. You can hear more of Bray at braymusic.com. This podcast was recorded on Friday, September 29th at the Burlingame Public Library. The Burlingame Historical Society copyrights this recording, and no part can be copied or replayed without the permission of the Burlingame Historical Society. So until next time, everyone, see you around Burlingame. It's a small town.